Welcome to the Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva, and today we're going to get some insight into women's wrestling. My guest today is Elena Pirozhkova, and she is the women's wrestling coach at NJCU, New Jersey City University. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so usually I start my guests where they went to college. So where'd you go to school?
Lots of places, and I'm still in school. I think I'm one of the people that followed a very non-traditional, to say the least, path of education. I graduated in 2005, and I didn't start school right away because I moved out to the Olympic Training Center actually, and just training. And I was actually pretty happy. I did not want to go to college actually. I didn't know what I wanted to do. You know, everybody's like, "What do you want to do for the rest of your life?" I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I like wrestling, and here I have a chance to train, travel the world. I was loving it. Then I was like, all right, education is going to play an important role, obviously. So I applied to Pikes Peak Community College. And so I started with a community college at first.
Okay.
And throughout my training at the Olympic Training Center, I would meet a lot of chiropractors. And I was like, wow, I was like, I really like chiropractors. I'm like, what is this profession and what do you guys do? I'm like, it's every time I go see a chiropractor, I'm like, I feel amazing. So we had a chiropractor who ran our clinic, who was in charge of our clinic at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado. And I was like, I think I want to be a chiropractor. He was like, all right. He's like, if you want to do that, if you become an Olympian, you get a scholarship. And I was like, my goal is to become an Olympian because I'm like, I want that scholarship. So I started researching like what you need to do to get into chiropractic school. And it was kind of a mix. Some places require a 4-year degree, but some colleges do accept 3 years of like science-based courses. So I started taking courses specifically to get into chiropractic school, to do the 90 credits of like your biology, chemistry, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, that's all I did for like 10 years. So it wasn't a lot of school for a long time, to be honest. Because I just knew the path I wanted to go. So then, obviously, I wrestled from 2005 till 2016. And then I competed in 2017 a little bit part-time, but I applied for chiropractic school. And I'm currently finishing up now. So I have 5 weeks left in my last semester. So I'm pretty excited about that. But once I stopped competing, I think I took education, I guess, as aggressively as I did my training. I obviously had a wonderful opportunity to go to chiropractic school, and I took that. But I've been working on my master's in nutrition simultaneously, so I have a year left in that program. And I'm finishing up my bachelor's in a business degree, like health and business administration. So.
Wow.
So kind of, I went from doing no school to almost doing like 3 programs and having a full-time job all at once. So it's non-traditional. You know, when I was competing, there wasn't too many choices for college. When I graduated, there were 5 women's colleges available. And I was like, I don't think that's really the option for me. And I obviously had the option to go out to Colorado, and I took it. And I just didn't like school. I just wasn't, so some kids like take a year off. I guess I took a couple of years off. So don't regret it. It was great. But kind of come around like full circle to now being a coach at a college and seeing all the wonderful opportunities that these young women have with almost like 60 colleges now. And obviously me being a college coach. So it's amazing to see like where the sport has grown from my opportunities just like less than a decade or just a little over a decade ago.
So now did you wrestle in the Olympics?
I did. Yep. So I competed in 2012 Olympics in London and 2016 Olympics in Rio.
And at the time there was only 5 women's colleges that had wrestling?
Back in 2005, yeah, there was like maybe 5 well-known ones. There could have been a couple that I didn't know about, but one of the biggest colleges was down in Kentucky, Cumberland College. And I grew up in Massachusetts, so I was like, I'm not gonna go down to Kentucky. Like, I don't like, it's nothing for me to do down there. Like, it's, so just in Colorado was just a way better option, and I honestly like just thought, I come from like immigrant family. I was born in Russia, but I grew up in the States. Grew up in a family of 9 kids. So growing up, I was just like, thinking like, you just go to school, go to local community college, get a job. And when I got recruited to go to Olympic Training Center, I was like, wow, I was like, I really feel like out of place here. But I was like, I'll use that as like a stepping stone in life to get somewhere. This is like, just, you know what I mean? Like, this is an amazing opportunity, but I'm just going to use it to go somewhere. And like, within 2 years, I made a world team, and you're making money and you're traveling. I was like, I really like this athlete business. I was like, I'm going to stick around a little longer.
So now, how'd you do in the Olympics?
Well, the Olympics, not so great. Well, 2012, totally bombed it. So I lost my first match, and then the girl I lost to, she lost. So that kind of knocked me out of the tournament. They don't like, you have to, the person you lose to has to make it to the finals. And obviously she didn't. So I decided to wrestle another 4 years. I was like, I feel like I just didn't like wrestle the best that I could. So in 2016, I lost in semifinals, like 2-1. It was like such a like heartbreaking loss, because I was just like, it's such a close match. As somebody I beat before, and then I ended up placing fifth. So some people, they're like, wow, you're fifth at the Olympics. That's amazing. I'm like, oh, whatever. all I care about, all people really care about is top three and one mostly. So, but I mean, it's, the life of being an athlete, it has its ups and downs, and you just kind of learn to value yourself through the ups and downs, I guess. You're not a better person because you won, and you're not any worse, I guess, if you lose, and it kind of, you develop like a more like even keel personality, so you don't like have like a big head and think you're super amazing.
So now, how did you become the coach at New Jersey City University?
Yeah, it was a little unexpected. I didn't think I would be coaching. Like, I love coaching. I think my mom would always say I would be a teacher. I would always take my younger siblings and like play school with them. And she's like, you're always bossing them around, So I was just like, I think I was kind of always meant to be in a position where I mentor and coach. I just never thought there's going to be really good opportunities to have a career in women's wrestling and coaching in college. But I live in the area, and somebody recommended that I should, talk to NJCU, and I met Sean, and he was amazing, and he really kind of sold me on the school and the vision that he has. And I was like, you know what, I could buy into this. And after meeting him, the other people on staff, I was like, you know what, I've heard some people had like maybe like poor experiences in coaching situations, but I was like, I don't think this is going to be like this here, so I took a chance on it, and it's been great, so it's just something I didn't expect, but I think just me being in the area and just they took their chance to recruit me.
That's great. So this is your first year?
So technically my second year, because I had a year of recruiting, and then we had this second year where we kind of had a somewhat of a season, I guess, with COVID. I mean, some people didn't have anything at all, so we're grateful that we got something, but we were able to practice to like a certain extent, and we were able to go to regionals, and we qualified 3 girls for nationals, and 2 of them ended up being All-Americans. So I was like, not too shabby for our first season, and with COVID restrictions and everything. So pretty excited to see where the girls are going to be next year, and we have a couple of really good girls coming in for our next recruiting season. So
Right.
yeah.
So now, let's go into women's wrestling first before we get into the students themselves. Where is women's wrestling at the college level? You said that there were 50 or 60 schools now that have
Yep.
women's wrestling?
Yep. So we're we got NCA emerging sports status. So we're on our way to be an official NCA sport. Um, a lot more schools. I think there's 2 or 3 D1 schools that have it. So there's a lot more D2 and D3 schools. But there's plenty of girls now that we can have like multiple competitions. Whereas before, like I said, it was for like a woman to go to a wrestling college. I'm like, there's only 5 colleges. I'm like, what is that going to do for me? You know what I mean? I was just like, I just didn't see a point to it. Whereas now you're like, wow, like I can go train at a college. I can have this experience. I can travel. One of my girls never even left New Jersey, so for her, like to just like using wrestling as a tool to just like kind of like expose them to like a greater world that's out there, as they step into their college experience. is something that like these girls look forward to, so it's not just like this like obscure thing that kind of like only a couple schools are doing now.
So now, how does it compare to men's wrestling? Is it have the same rules?
No, so in some aspects, like wrestling is wrestling, but men wrestle folk style and women do freestyle in college. So women wrestle the Olympic style wrestling that that the rest of the world competes in. Only the U.S. competes in folk style, and that's only in high school and men's college. So the U.S. likes to be a little different all the time. So they created their own wrestling style, but when women's colleges started coming on the scene a lot more, they went with freestyle in college just to make it kind of like a feeder system onto the Olympic team, national team, just because a lot of the girls who were making those teams were in college. So just to make the team, I guess the senior national team a lot more competitive, having the colleges do freestyle, it just creates like a better pipeline for, I guess, the sport overall, going from like a developmental start like when you're a kid to potentially become an Olympian in the future.
So do they have the same type of weight classes and things of that sort?
No, I mean the weight classes are based on kind of the natural range of like females, and then men have theirs based on like their average weights. So like I wasn't part of the committee that created those weights, but I'm sure they sit down and they look at like the biology of men and women, and then they look at the like average weights and how to like space those weight classes out. So the men actually like, probably have like a wider range of weights, just because like men can be a little bigger on like the tall end, you know what I mean? So, and women have smaller weights just because there's more women at that weight versus men. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
But the competition, how many schools do you play against? What are the type of schools?
So for us, it's a little different than most sports. Some sports compete locally with teams. We're the only school in New Jersey that has women's wrestling. Like Rutgers, I think, is starting a club. Like Princeton has a couple of girls, but there's no like, there's 10 girls in the state or 10 teams in the state we're going to compete against. So we have to travel a little bit more. Like some of the duels already were kind of setting up as ESU. We'll duel them at their place. They'll come to us. We might do a duel with Gannon University. So it's a little bit like a wider range of competition. So you got to think about more like who's on the East Coast versus who's just in Jersey.
So out of the 50, 60 schools, are a majority of them on the East Coast?
No, there's more schools in like the Midwest, and
Really?
yeah. So we have to travel a little bit more, but Sacred Heart just opened up a women's team. Obviously we have a team. Rutgers just is starting a club. I'm sure Princeton will start one soon. Columbia University has 6 women, I think, coming in this fall. So although, because right now all the women's colleges are all in one division, or like at least the NCAA ones, I know NAIA schools have their own individual kind of conference, but a lot of these local schools we can start competing against. So it's just a slightly different setup than the men, but as like the sport grows even further, they're going to start dividing it between like, D1, D2, D3 schools, just like the men have it. But right now, everybody's just kind of together.
And do they have the same type of NCAA tournament at the end where you become a national champion?
Yep. So that's where we had 2 of our girls like uh, became All-American this year. So I guess it's not official NCAA because we're still like we're in emerging sports status, but eventually it will be. We do have a regional qualifier now, so there's 4 regions, like the Northeast, like Southwest, so, and all the schools are divided into these 4 groups, and then 4 girls per weight class qualify, and then it's 16 girls at the nationals in a 16-man or 16-woman bracket.
Wow. So
Yeah.
now we'll get into the students. How do you find women wrestlers to come to school at New Jersey City University?
So I guess the lucky thing for me is I'm pretty well known in the wrestling community, so I have a lot of people reach out to me as well. So that has been obviously a great help in recruiting. I think if I didn't have a well-known name, I'd have to maybe travel a little bit more. But you look at the schools that have women on the team, especially the teams that have like big groups, not just one. And you kind of start studying like who are the number ones in the weight class, who's the senior, and you kind of watch them. Obviously you want great wrestlers to come join your team, but you also, like, as I go to tournaments and I do like clinics, I meet some of these athletes, and you kind of get to see their personalities, because you want to make sure you're bringing like a good kid in. You don't want to deal with attitude for 4 years. So maybe like if they have attitude on the mat and they're using it in a very productive way, that's great. But there's a lot more like that you're looking at when you're recruiting a kid. And also academic portion, like the academic portion is also a big part, because if they're not able to keep their grades up, you can't compete. So it's kind of like this multifaceted thing.
Sure. So now, do you recruit? Is it more like a recruiting at the high school level, where they have a high school season, or is it more like a AAU type of wrestling where you find them outside the high school doing that?
It's a little bit of both, So I do look at the high school season, but there's also summer camps and summer tournaments that, like, they can go to and meet some of these girls. They have like Wrestle Like a Girl events that you can, like, go help out at. Um, I mean, this year was a little different with recruiting, just because you couldn't do a lot of in-person things. But the first year, when I was recruiting my first like a group coming in, during the summer, I did a lot of events, going like helping running clinics, and that's where you meet most of the kids, and having some of my assistants go down and run some high school practices as well. So that way, so it's a kind of like a mix. There's a lot of clubs in the area that have women there as well, so you're making those connections with the club coaches as well. And then once, they give you like one or two girls and they start doing well, and they get all excited, so it's kind of like building the relationships like within, I guess, like the wrestling community here in Jersey.
Yeah. So now, when a student comes to New Jersey City University,
Hmm.
what can they expect from you, the coach, as well as the team? Give me a whole year's worth of what the student goes through. Do they show up at campus in August? Do they show up in October? Do they show up
So
when the season starts?
so they can start doing some captain's practices as soon as school starts, or like roughly right when school starts. I think it's like a week after they come. Coaches can't be there technically, but you can have your team captain run workouts. And then October 10th, I believe, is the start of our season. And then you can start practicing with the team. And then November 10th is when you can start competitions, or November 5th. I got to check on that. But right in the beginning of November, that's where you can start your competitions. And then you compete throughout the fall, and throughout the like early spring, like January, February. And you have your regionals somewhere usually in February. And then like February, March, that's where you kind of have your regionals, and then nationals. So, and then the season finishes. And then for the off season, the girls, they can, some of my girls qualify for the RTC that's located here in Hoboken, New Jersey, that's associated with Columbia. So during the summer, they can utilize that. They can go to some club training stuff. I mean, we kind of like talk about what they can do during the summer as far as like weight training activities, stay in shape, because we don't want them to come like come back in the fall all out of shape. We want them like to be somewhat ready. But what the girls can expect once they come on the team is some hard level training. I don't want to scare anybody away, but we train pretty seriously. We're not. I know some teams kind of like make you feel good, and we'll do that. We'll encourage you, but at the same time, one of my assistant coaches, I have him run our program. He's a very smart guy. He coached in Poland for 10 years. He actually coached one of my Olympic competitors. So when I hired him, I was like, small world. But over in Eastern Europe, you get a master's in coaching, right? So you actually have a degree in how to build programs, how to make sure you peak correctly, and all those things. I'm like, I experienced that, but I never had to do it myself. So when I was looking for assistant coaches to hire, I was like, okay, what are my holes in experience? Like, what am I missing? I was like, I have a lot of experience in wrestling. I'm good at wrestling. I know a lot of technique, but I don't have this like overarching experience of like planning a whole year. I was like, I really need help with that. So I hired my coach, and when we sat down, he was doing the plan. he's like, oh, he's like, half the girls are gonna quit. Just because, I mean, like, he's expecting like some high level training, and he wasn't wrong. I mean, there's some of those workouts, those girls were looking at me, all of them, and I'm like, they're gonna walk out right now. I'm done with this. Like, I thought this was gonna be fun. So it's hard training, but I always tell the girls, I'm like, look, I'm like, this will be the hardest thing you ever do, but once you do it and the successes that you will have, I was like, you'll become a better person, and you'll be able, like you'll walk out like feeling more like you can rely on yourself. You know what I mean? Just because like you just became like a tougher individual, I guess.
Now, how do you find the girls? What are you looking for other than academics? Of course, you need
Mhm.
academics to get into the school. But do you look for a particular weight, a particular height? Do they have to be, number one in whatever they're doing? Do they have to win a championship?
No, not necessarily. I mean, everybody wants the champ, so everybody's going for those girls. So it's not a guarantee. So it's when you get like a state champ, or you get somebody who has wrestled at Fargo, who's medaled at Fargo. Obviously that's like a great recruit. But realistically, it's not going to be your whole recruiting class. Biggest thing I look for, first of all, is personality. I need somebody who's hardworking, who like we don't necessarily have to get along, but if you can be a respectful person, hardworking, and willing to, I guess, work for your success. Sometimes like some of the more talented athletes, they kind of like come in and they like I expect to be treated a certain way, and they're really like nose in the air, and like what I mean. And I was just like, I personally, I don't want that attitude. And I think it's like my perfect recruit is not quite the number one, but maybe like the number two, number three. Like I said, I'm not against the number ones, but the number two, number three, it's like they're hungry for more, and they're talented enough where like you can train them and you're gonna have success, because to be realistic, not every kid has like athletic ability to the point where you're like, wow, you're gonna be the next Olympian. That's just the reality of life. So like again, the perfect recruit would be somebody who has enough talent, but not quite there yet. And with the right guidance, they're like, I am willing to listen and work, you know what I mean? And that's when like the synergy happens, where you're like, the coach is excited, the athlete's excited, you know what I mean? And that's where, I don't know, that's where the best, in my personal experience, that's where the best athletes come from.
So now a student comes there. What can they expect from the coach? What do you do with them that first day that you meet them?
Conditioning test. I mean, we talk to them about like how the year's gonna look like. We have like a meeting, just I guess the boring stuff, like this one practice will be, this is what the expectations are, and et cetera, et cetera. But girls are pretty easy to coach. I mean, I didn't really have any issues, to be honest. Like everybody's great. But once we start training, one of the first things we do is kind of like some base level training, kind of like getting them ready. I mean, doing a conditioning test as a baseline, we do definitely do that. So that kind of surprises the girls. The beep test everybody hates. You line them up, and you're like, all right, let's go. Let's see where you're at. And they're like, oh, I know. So, but so that's pretty hard, like right off the bat, I guess. But training is done smart. You don't kill your athlete just for the sake of killing. There's a certain methodology of how you get somebody in shape, because if you push them too hard, I know some colleges, they're like, oh, my girls are hurt and this. I'm like, well, you're overtraining them. If everybody's getting hurt like on the team, like you're overtraining.
Now, do you find girls just here in the United States, or do you go overseas and find women?
I haven't yet. There was a couple girls from overseas that started talking to me, but nothing really has quite materialized yet. But the interest is definitely there. I think just between my experience internationally, a lot of the girls know who I am, and one of my assistant coaches, Lucas, his experience internationally as well. I think when people see that, I think they understand that that's a high quality training program and a good set of coaches. So they're definitely looking, especially if they're looking to come to the US to get an education. I think we're probably one of the schools that they're definitely looking at.
Wow, that's fantastic. So now, do you do any type of visits to high schools and talk about women's wrestling? Do you do anything where you go out and talk about the sport?
We haven't done too much of that yet. Like I said, this past year has been pretty I'll say easy recruiting, but like again, like a lot of people know who I am, and just by reaching out, I had my assistants go to a couple of different areas. The one of the places that we did like reach out to, and I've visited a few times, is Beat the Streets, New York. They have a wonderful program that works with inner city kids over there, and we have a couple of recruits from that program at our school. So we had them over like visiting NJCU, and I've been there multiple times. I used to be a board member there. So it's just having that connection there has been great. And one of my assistant coaches, Barry, is also one of the coaches at Beat the Streets. So we have like a good connection going on there as well. So no, but that's going to be something that we're going to do more of, especially like now that we have um, a good group of girls, especially like if, if they came from a certain high school, come back, be like, hey, like this girl was like an All-American, like come back, inspire all the like rest of the girls, and slowly like develop these like kind of like feeder programs. I already have one coach. I already got like 3 athletes from him. he's super excited.
So now we're coming to the end of our show, and usually I ask my guests, what advice do you want to give to the parents and the students that want to come to school at New Jersey City University? They want to wrestle there. What advice do you want to give to them?
All right. Email me. My email is going to be on there if you're interested in coming to NJCU. A couple of things is definitely get your GPA up. It's a D3 school. Like I was telling my kids, I'm like, I wish I could give a lot of scholarship money to every kid coming in, but you are in charge of how much money you get when you come to a D3 school. So the best thing you can do for yourself is get your GPA up. Right now, if you get a 3.8, you get a full scholarship because they're not, or for the most part, there may be some like certain things, but if you have a high GPA, you're going to help yourself a lot more. So that academic portion is set. Once you have that, contact me, make a visit to the school. One of the biggest things I always hear is like, wow, this is way more than I expected. So like, I don't know what you were expecting in the first place, but but a lot of people when they come to NJCU, first of all, they're like, oh, I didn't know the school existed here. I didn't know it was this big. I didn't know it was this nice. I didn't know you had like such amazing coaches. So it's like every turn they're like odd at all these amazing things, So like I always say, like get your grades up because you'll be a lot more financially set, and come visit the school. Visiting the school and talking to the coaches is not a commitment, but it leaves like another, I guess it opens another door, and that's another potential for like a great future.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So you've been watching The Secrets of College Planning. I'm your host, Anthony Uva. Until next time.